Good afternoon. Back in session again. Call the roll, if you could, real quickly, to establish quorum.
Okay, Supervisor Cerna, Kennedy, Peters, Frost, Natoli.
Here.
Then you have a quorum.
Okay.
Okay.
Next item.
So we're going to take up item 16. This was held from your consent matters from this morning, and we're going to call that in with item 36. Item 16 is the Countywide Design Guidelines Amendment, an ordinance amending the Sacramento County Countywide Design Guidelines. The environmental determination is exempt. And for item 36, it's the 2017 Zoning Code Amendments Round 2, request to amend the zoning code of Sacramento County and the North Watt Avenue Special Planning Area Ordinance. The environmental determination is a negative declaration.
Okay. Mr. Pooley.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Chris Puhuli with Planning and Environmental Review. The item before you for consideration is adoption of an ordinance amending the countywide design guidelines. I'll handle that item first. The ordinance is a fairly comprehensive update to address multiple items that were not previously addressed in the guidelines, and the scope of work was prepared in consult with the Design Review Advisory Committee and also with the Design Review Administrator. And in addition to those items that weren't previously addressed in the document, there's also a major reformatting of the guidelines. As the clerk mentioned, the item was scheduled for consideration on the consent calendar. However, staff requested the item be pulled off consent to address an issue that a board member raised regarding automobile wash vacuum equipment. And so I did provide you with a handout, and I'd like to use the overhead projector if possible. This is an excerpt from page 4-18 of the Countywide Design Guidelines, which is Exhibit A of the ordinance that you have in your staff report package. And the fifth bullet point states that the vacuuming or drying equipment should not be placed adjacent to a residential district unless separated by a building or other solid barrier. Given that there have been concerns with previous projects where equipment has been separated by a solid barrier, staff would suggest the board could strike the language "or other solid barrier" from the guidelines when making a motion to adopt the item. That was the extent of the remarks that I was planning on making on this item. However, I am able to answer questions about this specific provision and/or any other provisions in this package.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Supervisor Peters.
Thank you. Chris, I think that's removing the other solid barrier is a very good idea. I had a couple of other questions, and that have to do with the sound levels allowed from the vacuum blowers, whatever you call them. Is that just a standard with environmental? It is an environmental standard that generally is considered as part of the environmental review process for a potential project. Is there a way to, if it's near a residential area, to have an increased standard of quiet? So they're not as loud in your residential areas? Right. That's something that we could evaluate as part of our zoning code provisions as it relates to washes, and it's something that we could evaluate. There's a lot of coulds in there. So what does that mean? I think that currently we would evaluate based on the standards in our county code to ensure that it meets standards, and that if we were to establish a new standard, I believe we could look at it as part of an update to our zoning code, if so directed. Okay, when would that is that scheduled to come back to us?
We are working on a new, staff is beginning work on a next round of zoning code amendments. You're scheduled to hear one right after this, but we are working on another package that's going to be going to the Planning Commission for initiation on November 13th. And it is something that, if the board wishes, could direct us to relook at some of the provisions in the zoning code as part of that amendment package.
Yeah, I'd like to have you look at it, because the other thing that happens when, people are vacuuming their cars, they have a tendency to leave the engine on and the radio turned way up so they can hear it over the vacuum, and that makes a large amount of noise coming fairly constantly during the day and evening.
Right.
And Leanne Moffett, your planning director, I would also add that you had, in the context of a project this morning, you had asked about the 24-hour use of car washes. And we actually think that looking at that in the context of the zoning code itself rather than design guidelines might be a better place to regulate that.
I agree. I just wanted to get it on the record so we didn't lose it.
So staff was thinking that with your board comments today, presuming that the board would like us to look at car washes in general, that could be something that we would have that topic initiated by the Planning Commission for us to evaluate whether we need to make any zoning code changes and bring that back in the third round package.
I really personally don't see any need for 24-hour use.
Right.
But particularly with these dryers or vacuums that are so noisy. And then if you're going to be bringing it back, I'd like you to look at whether the requirements for the wall, whether the height and sturdiness of the wall are sufficient.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Other comments or questions people want to draw attention to within the guideline?
I guess I want to just sorry on the blowers and the radios. I didn't separate those. I think there needs to be something in there about radio usage is discouraged or has to be kept below a certain level or something like that. I mean, these tend to go in areas where there's a lot of homes because everyone wants to wash their car. That makes total sense. But running the neighbors out of their houses because of the noise is not what we're after.
Excellent. Yeah, we have had some problems with some recent car washes, so I think taking those into account and looking at how the zoning code regulates them is timely.
And there may be an application coming in my district for a new one, and I'd like to move right along smartly with these changes.
Okay.
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 Thanks.
All right. So we have a staff recommendation here. You weren't coupling these two for purposes of action, so we can take action separately. So
Correct.
Okay. I think we've direction around that relates to car washes and some of the noise and compatibility issues to bring that back. If there's anything else, no one signed up. Anyone who wished to address item 16 held over from this morning, development guidelines? All right.
Okay, with those changes, I'd move that item.
Okay. It's moved. Do we have a second? Okay, it's moved and seconded then to approve the recommendation as outlined in the staff report and noting the direction was given as a part of that. Nothing further, please vote.
Unanimous vote.
All right, very good. Chris, you're going to call next item.
And now we're going to do item 36, and that's the 2017 zoning code amendments, round 2.
All right, so this item is an ordinance amending the county's zoning code and also the North Watt Avenue Special Planning Area ordinance. The amendment package before you for consideration largely consists of items clarifying zoning code sections and provisions that were unintentionally omitted from the 2015 zoning code update. These updates are intended to make the code easier to implement and more clear to customers. And additionally, there are amendments related to small wineries and craft breweries and also tattoo shops that are a bit more substantive. Therefore, my presentation will only briefly discuss the clarification and omission items, and I'll spend a little bit more time on the more substantive matters. It is important to note that these amendments were provided to the CPAC members for review and the Planning Commission, which recommended adoption of the amendment package at their September 11th hearing. The first series of amendments relates to clarification items, and the first I'll mention addresses unclear regulations for event centers. Currently, there's no standards related to event centers, and these uses have been inconsistently processed as other types of recreation uses in the code. This amendment will create clear and enforceable standards and permitting requirements specific to event centers. The second amendment addresses inaccurate use standards within the North Watt Avenue SPA. There's a use standard in the SPA that provides standards for auto sales. However, auto sales are not allowed in the SPA, but marine or boat sales are, and so therefore the amendment clarifies that the standard applies to marine or boat sales and not to auto. The third amendment addresses standards and permit requirements for cargo containers.
Chris, just one second.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry, you were skipping around there. I was trying to catch up with you. You went to the last item first. On automobile sales, so you're proposing new standards for new and used auto sales. So right now it does not allow them, and this would allow them?
No. So in the North Watt Avenue SPA, there's a standard related to auto sales. However, auto sales are prohibited in the SPA. So what we're doing is we're clarifying that those standards only apply to boat and marine sales and not auto sales because they are prohibited in the code.
You're clarifying this, and you've still got me lost. So,
Draw a picture.
yeah, so the SPA does or does not allow auto sales?
Does not.
Okay, and you are suggesting that we also do not allow marine and boat sales, or that we do?
Marine and boat sales are allowed. So staff believes that there was an error with the SPA that should have applied standards to boat sales because that is allowed, and that's what we are clarifying.
I love clarifying. Okay, so you're changing it so that marine supply or boat and boat sales will not be allowed?
No, I'm sorry.
You're getting double negatives in there, so that's why I'm losing you.
Okay, here comes Leanne to the rescue.
See if I can interpret. So auto sales are not allowed, and they will continue to not be allowed.
Okay, I got that one.
Yeah.
It's the boat sales.
Boat sales were allowed, but when it came to the standards, the title of that referenced auto sales, not boat sales. So boat sales will be allowed, but the standards will refer to boat sales.
Why are we allowing boat sales if we don't allow auto sales?
That part I'm not sure.
We were not trying to change the uses that had been adopted through the prior public process. We were trying to get the language to match, and that's all we were trying to do. So,
Well,
why?
I'm sorry, that doesn't make sense to me that you'd allow boat sales and not auto sales. I know Phil's got part of this Watt Avenue. Does that make sense to you?
It can make more clear sense.
Are you going to clarify that? Yeah. I just know, I mean, boat sales are, I think they're more unattractive than auto sales. Honestly, on certain parts of Watt Avenue, auto sales would be
I've seen
beneficial on some of those huge lots.
I've seen both do a great job and both do a really poor job.
Yeah, but why would you not allow auto sales but do allow boat sales?
Well, again, it kind of depends on the
standards.
the establishment. I mean, I've seen some car lots used and new that, in my opinion, just are not very aesthetically pleasing. I've seen boat sales, for instance, even along highway quarters, the backs of boat lots, notably the one in Rockland, San Ramon Boat Center, that does a great job. So, I mean,
Well, one of the things that caught my attention was some years ago, during the recession, there was a shopping center project in my district that was trying to create different sources of revenue, and they wanted to use cyclone fence to make a big square in the middle of the parking lot for boat sales, and which we declined to move ahead with that. But I don't know. It seems to me it ought to be all one or the other. Maybe that's a different item in front of us. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we were not attempting to tackle the original decision that had been made through that process. If you'd like us to put that on the list and revisit that at a future package, we could. But this was simply to clarify inconsistent language. That's all we were.
I guess maybe I'd like to see the design standards before we do that. You know, if you can bring them to me, and maybe run them by Supervisor Cerna too.
So you want to hold on even the clarification then?
No,
So-
I'd say go ahead with the
Okay.
clarification so that that's clear, because if it takes a while to come back to us, it's just.
Right. And we are routinely running packages through, so if it does look like it warrants something, we can have that initiated and put it in a package.
Can't drive, but you can float.
So did this come about as a request from a property owner, or?
It did
You were
not.
just reading this at 3 in the morning and found this inconsistency?
Close. We do have inquiries that come in to our planning counter, and it was an inconsistency that was brought to our attention.
Okay.
So the last item on this slide is related to cargo containers. Several of the standards and requirements are currently unclear in the code. This amendment makes it clear that design review is required for cargo containers in residential and ag-res zones, and strengthens permit requirements in ag-res zones.
They're required to be in the rear yards, correct?
For residential or?
Ag residential.
Yes, they are.
Since we changed the code, I can tell you they're showing up more and more. I've heard from a few neighbors about where they're placed, and I don't think it's really clear. I don't know if that even people are even getting permits. Do we have suppliers of those that would know the regs? So when most people don't just take their pickup in and have it loaded up and bring it home. So somebody's got to bring this out there. So I don't know who handles cargo containers, but I imagine it's a pretty small piece of the overall industry. We ought to maybe have a meet and greet with those folks and then introduce them so they know when they're,
That's something that we could do. We have not done any proactive work with suppliers of cargo containers.
And again, I have no idea. Maybe there's a whole lot of folks that do that. It just seems to me once they put them on the site, they're there to stay unless
Hard to move.
Yeah, hard to move. So whether in residential or ag residential, and I know it's come to my attention recently in a couple of situations that they're showing up in the front yard, right across the road from somebody's front window, and it just and they're painted different colors, and so because they're required. So when you say development review, somebody comes and gets a permit in order to place one on their property.
They would come in for a design review for
What's
it.
the cost of doing that? As much as a container costs?
I'm not sure the cost of the container, and they range from an incidental design review, which is around $400 to $500, to a minor design review, which could be close to $1,000.
And therein lies the discouragement. Not that people shouldn't be doing the right thing, but most folks aren't going to come down to the county and tell you that they're going to do one. If they're going to if you tell them they got to spend $1,000 to have it reviewed, or $500. I don't know what those things cost. And again, I think the rule is an important rule, but I'm not so sure we're encouraging folks to do the right thing. And then they're there, then it becomes a code issue. And do you have any sense, Chris, of what sort of complaints we're getting on these since we're doing this clarification? And
Yeah, we have gotten complaints from neighboring property owners about the location of it being close to property line. That it's visible because they're rather tall, and so if you have a standard fence, if you don't have proper screening, which are some of the changes that are being made to the code to require screening. These are visible from neighboring properties, and so those are some of the complaints that we hear from property owners.
could we not have an advisory type of, similar to a building permit, so we could come to the counter, you could give them the guidelines, And if it looked like it was too out of sorts, obviously you could drive it to another level. But to charge $400 just to give them basically the zoning code and tell them, here's what you got to do, because you don't require a building permit to have those. So you're just basically giving them guidelines. I don't even know if we do any checking to go and see. I mean, is that part of the $400? You go out and check it afterwards?
No, that wouldn't be checked as part of the process.
So I guess I'm going to suggest, and maybe I'll hear from colleagues on this, but again, admit I fit into one of our unique categories. But once they're out there and they become a problem, then then we chase them with code enforcement. We're $400 on their first inspection and all that goes with that. Maybe we can do this like an over-the-counter generally, unless they're, but encourage folks to come in, not unlike what we do with water heater permits where they're less than $100 or, a re-roof, where it's a basic one. If people are going to use these for, extra storage, what we really want to encourage, because they don't require a building permit, is they put them in the right place, that they have them painted, that they be screened if that's appropriate, depending upon the size of the residential lot. And I'm thinking probably more in the lines of ag residential. But if I'm going to tell people you got to go get planning department clearance, and then they make the drive downtown, or maybe they could do it over the internet. I don't know. But you're going to go downtown. You're going to spend $400. You're going to have to fill out this application. People, a lot of them are going to say, forget it. You find out, well, I got one, then come get me. And again, I don't want to encourage that type of activity. And I don't know how many we're dealing with here, but I can't imagine there are hundreds. But maybe this is one that we have a streamlined permit with a clear diagram, talks about setbacks, and it could be done for $25 over the counter or something like that. Basically, but then you've got an address though, and you get some signature to it. At least that people have gotten the information, and I think it would help clear up a lot of people just doing it because they figure nobody's going to say anything about it until somebody says something about it, and then you're getting the complaints you're getting, and then we're into a whole other process. So I would encourage us to, I think the clarifications are fine, but maybe we got to look at a streamlined, very reduced fee, basically to get it on record, get the information in their hands, and then if we do get complaints, obviously then you'll chase it with code enforcement and force them to do, if they don't want to comply otherwise, to do it right. So, okay. All right.
Okay.
Next.
Oops. All right. The Fourth Amendment organizes regulations related to drive-through facilities. Requirements for drive-throughs are located in separate sections of the code, but generally have identical standards. And so this effort is to consolidate and clarify those standards and permit requirements for those facilities and removing redundant language. The next amendment relates to design review requirements for signs that are attached to buildings or wall signs. The amendment removes the design review requirement for wall signs, which is burdensome to owners where business names change frequently and tenants change. In most cases, a permit will still be required, and the design standards regulating area, height, location, and illumination would still apply to ensure that they are compliant and compatible with the surrounding community. The Sixth Amendment clarifies accessory structure standards in residential zones. Residential accessory structures and ag structures incidental to a residential use are located currently in different sections of the zoning code. And so this amendment consolidates all of those regulations and reduces repetition in the code.
Could I ask on that? And Leanne, you and I have had a little bit of conversation about a recently pulled building permit in the area I represent, and we're on a AR5 parcel. They pulled a permit for a 24,000 square foot greenhouse.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I know. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And for one thing, the size and scale, irrespective of what the proposed use and or intended use is, I'm not going to that point right now. I'm just, they weren't required to meet any particular setbacks besides the minimum setbacks for accessory dwellings. The height wasn't necessarily exceptional, but the size was, and then scale it with fences that exceed 7 foot in height and so forth. That again, it's one of those things where they did come down, they paid the building permit, but building permits said they did just what they required. They got planning department sign off because there's nothing in the code. Again, I don't want to discourage animal husbandry or certainly uses throughout this county that would, for barns and related agricultural pursuits, even on smaller parcels. But I think that won't be the first time we may see one of these, and I do know that it's got significant concerns with the neighbors, and it hasn't even been put to use yet. So I would just suggest that we might want to take a look at this, and I don't know how we address it, but I think it caused enough concern with folks in the immediate neighborhood that, and I could see where it could, and there's nothing prohibits it. Just the scale of this thing, and where we used to have requirements for accessory dwellings that said it could only be twice the size of the house on the property and that type of thing.
Yeah, I was recalling, was that an agricultural structure or residential structure?
No.
It was
Well,
residential.
there was for residential and accessory. It used to be in the past you couldn't have a shop that was more than either half or 2 times the size if you had a large house. Depending upon that. We changed some of that in the most recent code changes. But now when I see a 24,000 square foot layout on an AR5 and the house is a tenth that size or whatever, it's.
Okay, well, that's something we can take a look
Yeah,
at.
and again, maybe we can talk with the Farm Bureau and our Ag Advisory Committee, which we just appointed to, and have them take a look at this as well, and maybe offer some suggestions as a board as how we might deal with that.
Yeah, as I recall, what you and I talked about is we don't really have any lot coverage standards in the agricultural area. So we had never really seen extremely large agricultural buildings, but we may be now, so we may need to take a look at those.
Yeah, the organic lettuce growers are organizing.
Right, yes.
Okay, Chris.
All right, the next amendment relates to non-conforming residential lots. Historically, county staff has allowed non-conforming residential lots to be considered legally non-conforming if a valid building permit, acceptable lot size, appropriate access, and public utilities are in place. However, there is no codified allowance for that practice, and this amendment will formalize that practice and develop a consistent approach in determining lot status. The proposed amendment will better inform residents of the requirements for obtaining legal status and will expedite staff determinations of lots that may be non-conforming. The Eighth Amendment addresses clarifications related to emergency shelters. The zoning code references incorrect development standards for emergency shelters and does not reference the section detailing the permitting requirements for county facilities for which the board has budgetary responsibility. The amendment corrects the development standard notation and clarifies the permitting requirements. The Ninth Amendment clarifies regulations for uses subject to both distance separation and minor use permits. The amendment does not change the requirements for permitting, but makes it clear that the findings must also be made for approval. The amendment better informs users of the code of all appropriate requirements for these uses. The next set of amendments relate to items that were not addressed, that were addressed in the previous zoning code, but were not carried over in the 2015 update. Home occupations are currently not permitted in commercial zones. In the prior code, home occupations were allowed by right in all commercial and CO zones, and this allowance was unintentionally omitted from the new code. The amendment allows for home occupations by right in all zones where residential uses are legally permitted, consistent with the provisions of the prior zoning code. The 11th Amendment addresses design review requirements. The zoning code currently requires design review for most projects that require intensive entitlement requests. However, the code is silent as to design review on commercial and institutional projects in the agricultural and ag-res zones. The proposal adds a design review requirement for all commercial and institutional projects in these zones to ensure that the projects are consistent and compatible with surrounding uses. The next two updates relate to terminology updates. The 12th Amendment relates to individuals with disabilities and the Americans with Disabilities Act. The Zoning Code and Design Guidelines use incorrect language when referring to people with disabilities and outdated references to the Americans with Disabilities Act. This proposal makes various language changes and citations throughout the document. The next amendment relates to county department restructuring. In April 2017, the board approved an organizational restructuring package resulting in the removal of the Planning and Environmental Review Division from the Community Development Department. The code, however, still refers to the Department of Community Development throughout, and so this amendment makes those necessary changes. The 14th Amendment addresses regulations for tattoo shops. So in response to concerns from potential tattoo shop owners, on April 25th, 2017, the board directed staff to review regulations related to tattoo shops. Currently, tattoo shops are only permitted in the mixed-use LC and GC zones with a minor use permit. Additionally, tattoo shops are required to be at least 100 feet from residentially zoned properties and sensitive uses such as daycares, libraries, and parks. Tattoo shops must also adhere to over-concentration requirements, prohibiting them in areas where there are more than 2 uses such as hookah lounges, massage establishments, and check cashing businesses. The separation requirements and over-concentration requirements were initially established in response to safety, economic, and quality of life concerns raised by community members. In preparing a recommendation for the board for consideration, staff reviewed a recent court case where the Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit ruled that tattooing is fully protected by the First Amendment, and that the process of tattooing may only be regulated by a proper time, place, and manner restrictions. Further, staff reviewed crime data from the Sheriff's Department that showed a relatively low number of calls for service from existing tattoo shops, which does not seem to corroborate some of the community concerns regarding these establishments. Staff's analysis of the existing zoning code regulations governing tattoo shops is that new shops can only be located in an extremely limited number of properties, and that potential shop owners would have a very difficult time finding a location in which to operate. Therefore, staff is recommending the following permitting approach. 1, removal of the distance separation requirements. 2, tattoo shops be permitted in the industrial zones subject to a use permit by the Planning Commission. And 3, that tattoo shops be permitted in the LC zone subject to a zoning administrator use permit, and the GC zone with a planning director's minor use permit. I should note that staff is recommending lower level hearing authorities based on our review of the crime data for existing tattoo businesses. However, should the board not agree with staff's recommendation, higher hearing authorities could be considered by the board. The final amendment relates to...
We had a question, I think Supervisor Peters, on this comment.
Yeah, back in your presentation, you said subject to time, place, and something else.
Time, place, and manner restrictions.
And what?
Manner.
Manner. What does that mean?
I can take that. There's generally zoning regulations.
Microphone, I don't know, Christopher, your microphone's on? Try again.
Just get closer to
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
Sorry. Generally, zoning regulations are subject to reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions when there's protected speech involved. And here the Ninth Circuit has held that tattoo parlors are fully protected by the First Amendment, and that the standard is a reasonable time, place, and manner restriction. So basically that means that the county can regulate, but the regulations are when, where, and how, not whether. So we can't restrict tattoo parlors completely, and so I think that's why the recommendation about removing the distance separation requirements, because effectively we limit so extremely where the tattoo parlors can go that it's almost a...
Was that specific thing about distance requirements reflected in the court's opinion?
It was not, but the court, but that is a time, place, and manner restriction. And what the court said is that you can't outright restrict a tattoo parlor because they are protected by the First Amendment, but you can impose reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions on them. And so I think I've looked at what's being proposed by planning here, and I think that we are within the law on what we're doing now, but subject to challenge on the existing regulations because of the distance
Well, is what's
limitations.
proposed the absolute minimum to get away? I mean, because we had tons of neighborhoods in here saying, you know, we want distance separations on this kind of business, and I don't know how I'm going to explain this to them. So
Well,
I guess I
think-
want to know that we haven't been
Right.
overly generous in
Right.
trying to revamp the code.
I mean, I think Chris can explain more, but I think he's checked in with the Sheriff's Department, and they said there have been no issues or no,
Maybe
very
because
minimal.
we restricted the distances.
I don't know, but the tattoo parlors that we have apparently have had very few, if any, problems. So there's really no basis for us to
But
treat them differently
It was the
than
idea
similar
that they would
businesses.
be, you know, you get a shopping center with a tattoo, a smoke shop, a hookah lounge, massage parlor. It was all the kind of, I'll just call them noxious uses. And that was the idea, is keep them from grouping together and having problems therein. And because of what they look like from the street. They're,
Yeah. But I don't think that the data that the county has substantiates that concern.
Yeah, but this is quality of life. It isn't just data. It's quality of life.
But it still has to be something that can withstand legal challenge when it's a fully protected First Amendment right.
Okay,
So
I
it
get
makes it
that.
more
My
difficult.
question still hasn't been answered. Is what you're suggesting the absolute minimum we can, you know, get away with, I would say, and reflect the court's decision?
I think what staff so far had talked about is we could elevate from the staff planning director minor use permit up to more of a hearing authority, higher hearing authority, which does tend to have more CPAC review and more rigorous review.
But
There's
would
more
those
cost.
reviews be subject to what we're just talking about? I mean,
I think each individual site would be discretionary. It's more the approach when there are no sites, because we have applicants coming into us basically saying, I can't find a single site to apply for because there are existing massage parlors and other existing uses, and therefore I'm not even allowed with these distance separations to even file a use permit application. And that's what became a challenge, was when we had sufficient evidence that there was no place that they could even apply for a use permit for. So our discussions were, as long as we provided a use permit path to look at it on a discretionary site-by-site basis, that gave us a better stance. In fact, actually in downtown Rio Linda area, that SPA was written differently. It was written for its own downtown Rio Linda area, and it allowed a use permit. I can't remember if that was zoning administrator or planning commission.
Zoning administrator.
Zoning administrator use permit. We actually had like 20 or so people at the CPAC supporting the tattoo shop in downtown Rio Linda, and unanimous
Well,
CPAC
every neighborhood
vote.
is different, has its
every
own
neighborhood is
personality.
different. So our thought was that a use permit path allowed that neighborhood by neighborhood sort of approach. Now, whether a staff level minor use permit that doesn't go to the CPAC is right or not, that's where we thought there was maybe some discretion to elevate it from staff minor that doesn't get reviewed by the CPAC, and maybe ZA or Planning Commission would be a better approach. It is certainly more expensive, but.
And it would be legally permissible if that's the board's preference. If you want to impose a higher review standard, you can, review body.
Okay. Well, I think we should, because it would give the neighborhoods a chance to comment on it. Maybe certain neighborhoods think it's fine, and others not so much. It probably depends on, you know, where you live and what's already existing in your neighborhood.
I would caution, though, and I don't know the requirements off the top of my head for similar uses like hookah lounges, et cetera, but I think you need to make sure that you're not treating tattoo shops to a more expensive process than similarly situated uses, and I don't know if we are or not. Leanne and Chris probably can respond to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could probably get away with either zoning administrator or planning commission
That's correct.
at the board's discretion.
Yeah, you were looking at Chris. I couldn't hear what you said.
I said, I think we could get away with either zoning administrator or planning commission, and that would be similar to other types of use permit processes we have currently in the zoning code.
I'm fine with planning commission. Then you get the neighborhood can testify, and you have 5 appointed members who can pass judgment.
I have a question just on that. So it would be in cases where you had a concentration or in every case?
In every case.
So in
So
every
we would
case, you
be,
would-
staff's
to Chris's
recommendation,
point, yeah.
staff's recommendation is that we would remove those, the separation requirements as well as the over-concentration requirements from the tattoo shops, but each tattoo shop would be subject to issuance of a permit.
Okay, so then just to Chris's point about what's required of hookah lounges, pawn shops, smoke shops, thrift shops, I'm not going to throw the adult uses in there, but check cashing, payday loan establishments, do those all require use permits to the planning commission or the zoning administrator? And I've got a center that has 5 of those in one center, so and we actually had a hookah lounge go in right before the code changed.
We would have to go back and check. I think most of those uses are subject to a minor use
The
permit.
minor use permits,
But they are subject to all of the distance, separation, and over-concentration requirements.
Okay.
Making it very difficult for any of those establishments
well,
to.
that's what brings us here, right?
Right.
So if you were to take it the next step above, again, hearing certainly Supervisor Peters about the planning commission, but the zoning administrator would be the next one in between, and it's appealable to the planning commission. Is that correct?
That's correct. Or
If you were to go
appealable to the
that-
Board of Zoning Appeals.
Board of Zoning Appeals, sitting as the planning commission sitting as that. Okay.
Well, and also, if the CPAC recommended denial, it would automatically
Go to
go
planning commission?
from the ZA to the planning commission.
Okay, so it provides somebody, because again, I certainly the community, each community may view it differently. I wanted to say too, because again, at least one of the situations, and I believe the proprietor is in the audience today, actually can do piercings, but can't do tattoos. And there's no restriction. And again, they may not be, equivalent as far as traffic or people's, view of what happens there, but that's allowed by right. And actually, I think, has operated at that location, just couldn't do the tattoos. And so again, I think some ability to go through a hearing process. I'll just say that I think it's really important. I know I've visited with staff about this, and I recognize that each community may have different views. And we did have some folks, as Supervisor Peters says, that were concerned about a number of these uses, and there was a reason for the concentration. But I think as it was, at least made known to me, that it became very difficult to find even a location where you could even propose, because the uses that were there, they got grandfathered in, and we had those distance requirements for a good reason. Others got in under the wire, and then people were stuck. So this would allow for some ability to go through a community vetting process and actually have it decided at one level or the other. So, like I say, I would be okay with a ZA, just which would allow, again, the CPAC to appeal it to the planning commission if it was a controversial one. So you still get the 5-member appointed body to make a determination. So I don't know how others feel about this. I see Sue Frost.
How does that impact those who we have limited use on certain projects where we said you can't have tattoo parlor here in this one location?
So if there's a zoning agreement with a list of restricted uses, this would not apply to that. Those restrictions remain.
This is like general
This is the rest of
applications that are
the-
coming in for a new business.
Yes.
Did Rio Linda work out their problem? The tattoo parlor in Rio Linda?
Yeah, so there are, with the Rio Linda special planning area, there are certain districts within the ordinance that allow for tattoos subject to a issuance of a permit from the ZA. And so the one that came in recently did get approved on M Street.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is with the just a ZA, though, then it ends up getting appealed to the Board of Supervisors, and I don't think we should be weighing in. I mean, I think that should be solved at the sort of citizen government level. That's why I would look more towards the Planning Commission.
The ZA goes to the board?
Well,
If
isn't that what the Merlon-Guerre situation is? I mean, the CPAC...
Environmental document, though.
Yeah, that's a different provision. So the normal case would be if the CPAC recommends approval of a ZA item, it's heard by the ZA, and if it's appealed by a citizen, that would go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, which is the Planning Commission.
Right.
If the CPAC were to recommend denial, then it would automatically bump to the Planning Commission. It would start at the Planning Commission, and it could be appealed to the board.
Okay. I can go with the CA
Yeah,
too.
okay. Supervisor Cerna?
Thank you. Question about the amendments as they affect wineries, small wineries. You have one of the bullets there that express that the wineries would not be permitted in the CO zone. Is there anything in the amendments that are being proposed here that would prohibit the ability for there to be a more urban type, smaller footprint winery? It's not affiliated with any of their own vineyards, so there's obviously not going to be any vineyards in an urban setting necessarily. But I'm curious because there are examples locally where small wineries are actually bottling, they're actually producing the wine on site in a very, very small, relatively small footprint in urban commercial zones. And so, judging by the smile on some of your faces, I think you know which one I'm talking about. So I just want to make sure that we're not doing anything that unnecessarily restricts the ability for boutique wineries to proliferate and be good neighbors and produce their product in urban settings.
Certainly not with this amendment package here. It's a fairly narrow amendment that will allow for small wineries and craft breweries on in CO zones. Those zones currently, these uses are allowed in most ag, mixed-use, commercial, industrial zones, subject to I believe, a zoning administrator use permit. It looks like Leanne is looking at the code right now, but I believe that to be the case. And so there isn't anything in this amendment package that would prohibit those types of uses from continuing.
We allow small wineries and specialty and craft breweries in the mixed-use zones and the limited commercial and general commercial zones. They simply are required to have a sales and tasting room or a restaurant.
Okay.
And then there's some standards that I can look up real quick and see what else they say.
That's all right. I just want to make sure that point is underscored here. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, we like wineries and breweries.
All righty. Yes.
So that concludes the remarks that I was planning to make. Just as a reminder, as far as the staff recommendations, we're recommending that the board adopt the negative declaration prepared for the project and approve the proposed amendments to the zoning code and to the Watt Avenue special planning area.
Okay. I don't see more questions about your comments about board members. Let me see. Anybody in the audience here wish to address what's before us? Okay, I guess it's all understood then. All right, with that then, bring it back to the board for a motion, and we get some direction out of a couple of the items here today, so we want to start. We move the staff recommendation, I believe, with the designation on the tattoo parlors for the use permit to the ZA, is that correct? That's where we ended up?
Yes, that's the only change that I have noted, and I have several other follow-ups,
And the
but
follow-ons for
separate from
boats
these
and
packages.
Boats and cars on
Yeah.
Watt Avenue.
Yeah.
Car washes, North Watt Avenue, cargo containers, and accessory structures in agricultural areas are all follow-up items.
All right,
Move it.
okay, I'd second it. So it's moved and seconded. Nothing further, please vote.
Unanimous vote.
And this becomes effective 30 days?
30 days.
30 days, okay. All righty, very good. Okay, next item. Got one more left for today.
Item 37 is the Reclamation District Number 1000, election of trustees and vote for district trustees.
Good afternoon, Chair Natoli, members of the board, Rob Leonard, Deputy County Executive. RD 1000 is a special district that was formed by the state legislature. RD 1000 has been providing flood protection services and support in the Natomas Basin since 1911. RD 1000, as I'll call it, maintains 40 miles of levees in the Natomas Basin, generally bound by the Sacramento River, including the levees along Sacramento River, the American River, the East Main Drain, Pleasant Grove Creek, and Natomas Cross Canals. The district maintains canals within the district and also maintains 7 pump stations. In odd years, consistent with state law, the district is required to hold election for members of the board of directors. In 2017, there are 4 seats that are open. We have 5 candidates that are running for those 4 seats, in part just explaining why we're before you this afternoon for this action. So because of the fact that we have 5 candidates running for 4 seats, and we do have 4 incumbents that are running for re-election, the Board of Supervisors needs to appoint a election board. And so one of the recommendations contained in the report is the appointment of 3 individuals who I'll identify in just a moment to create an election board to oversee the election which will occur on November 7th. Another action for consideration of the board today is the casting of the ballots associated with the county's ownership of land in the Natomas Basin. And so that's a process that I'll walk you through today. And then another action associated with this item today is the board approving a resolution that would designate Michael Peterson, Director of Water Resources, or Brandon Ladd, who's with me here today, analyst in the county executive's office, to cast the ballots consistent with the direction that the board gives today. So against that backdrop, what I'd like to do, I'll identify the members of the election board, and those that are being recommended by the district are Mr. J.N. Clifton, Mr. Joseph D. Countryman, and Mr. Timothy N. Washburn. Those individuals would serve as the election board, and the requirement is that the Board of Supervisors appoint those individuals to serve in that capacity. The candidates, the 5 candidates that are running for the district are Thomas M. Gilbert, Christopher M. Burns, Nick F.S. Avdis, David Christoffel, and Deborah G. Jones. Those are the 5 candidates. And so to walk the board through the election process, we've prepared to follow the same process that we did in 2013. And I know we have several members of the board who weren't here at that point in time. But what we have done and what we propose to do today is a 2-step process, where the first step would be to narrow the candidates from 5 to 4. And so we prepared ballots, which we'll distribute to you. In fact, now might be a good time. And then based upon the product of that process, where we will take the top 4 vote getters, we would then move into the second phase, which, unless the Board of Supervisors wants to distribute the county shares equally across those 4 candidates, if that was the case, the process would be over. If the board doesn't want to do that, we'll move into the second phase of the process, wherein we'll distribute the same ballots again and ask you to distribute your votes across those 4 candidates. And then essentially that would provide the basis for guidance to staff to cast the county's ballots.
Rob, can I interrupt for a second?
Certainly.
So if I'm not mistaken, the last time we did this, we shortened the process a bit. I think we just took a step out, and we took what has just been handed to us, wrote a percentage next to the name of the candidate. If each of the candidates received an equal amount, we're done, right?
That's correct.
Okay. I would suggest that we do the same this year.
So we would put 25% next to 4 candidates,
Correct.
and then it'd be over with.
Certainly.
That's what we did at Safeco.
Yeah. Okay. Everybody good with that?
Sure.
So these are in alphabetical. Did you have any particular way you wanted to do this before we get into that, so everybody gets a fair shot at it? Okay, Supervisor Serna.
Yeah, just one important note. I think you went through the list of candidate names, Rob, and next to each candidate name in the board letter, there is a brief reference to how they've declared themselves. In some cases as incumbent, and in other cases as their professional capacity. I think it's important, especially for the newer members of the board, to understand who's an incumbent and who's not an incumbent. So if you can do that real quick.
Certainly. Maybe the best way to do it is Christopher M. Burns is not an incumbent.
Okay.
The other 4 are incumbents. And as Supervisor Serna mentioned, the characterization after the names on the ballots that we provided you is the same as what those candidates wanted to see on the ballot for the election. So again, Christopher M. Burns is not an incumbent, the other 4 are.
Okay. Before we get into the designation, this is a public hearing, so we have the ability to hear from any candidates, so they choose to. Is that the process we use?
Yes.
Somebody want?
Yeah.
Okay. So if I don't have anybody signed up, and I don't know if anybody in the audience wishes to address the matter. Otherwise, we'll bring it back to the board. So. Okay. All right. Nobody rushing forward. Okay, I'll bring it back to the board. So we have a suggestion then that we cast our votes in equal proportions of 25% apiece for 4 candidates. And let's have some board conversation.
You come pick them up now?
Yeah.
And Stephanie will collect the ballots. And then she'll take them over to Brandon, who will
Tally the vote?
tally the votes. And again, while she's doing that, Paul Devereaux, the general manager and district engineer for RD 1000, is also here in the board, just in the event that there are any questions. Okay, the vote of the board reflects that the ballots would be cast equally across those that are currently incumbents, and Christopher Burns would not receive any votes from the county. So if the board is comfortable with that, we'll certainly move ahead with that. We do need you to take action to appoint the election board that I mentioned, Mr. Clifton, Mr. Countryman, and Mr. Washburn, and then approve the attached resolution authorizing staff to go to the election on November 7th and cast the votes as reflective of the board's action.
I move approval of the election board as recommended by staff.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Please vote.
Unanimous vote.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, that concludes the regular agenda. I don't have anybody else signed up, so we'll go to comments from the county executive. Mr. Kell.
None to that.
Okay, board members. Ms. Ross, Ms. Peterson. Good. Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Cerna, announcements. Mr. Natoli, nothing. Ms. Evans, anything? If not, I will conclude today's agenda. We'll be back here next Tuesday, right?
Tuesday night.
Same time, same place. Okay, different topics. All right, everybody have a safe Halloween. Take care.